It's easy to overlook the power of silence. We live in a world where noise is constant: voices, music, traffic, the hum of technology, the ticking of the clock. Every moment seems to demand something from us. Yet, in the midst of all this chaos, there's an extraordinary strength in stillness. Silence, when embraced, holds the ability to speak louder than words, to reach deeper than any sound could ever hope to. Think about it. The moments when we're truly listening, those quiet times when we let the world fall away and all we can focus on is the pulse of our thoughts, the beating of our heart, the space between breaths, those are the moments when clarity reveals itself. In silence, there's a power that can shake the very foundation of what we know about ourselves and the world around us. Sometimes we're afraid of silence because we don't know what it will reveal. We fill the empty spaces with chatter, with distractions, with things that keep us from confronting what lies beneath. But silence is not something to fear. It's not an absence, it's a presence. It's a force, a companion. It demands us to show up, to sit with ourselves in a way that's often uncomfortable, but ultimately necessary. When we allow ourselves to be still, we start to hear things we might not have noticed before. We hear the inner voice, the quiet whisper that guides us, that challenges us, that calls us to be better. And it's in that silence where true growth begins. It's easy to speak, to give opinions, to argue, to fill up the air with words. But silence requires courage. It's not just the absence of sound, it's the willingness to sit in that void and face the truth, whatever it might be. In those moments, the mind begins to clear. The noise fades away, and you find yourself standing face to face with your own reality. What's left? What are you left with when you strip away all the external chatter, all the distractions, all the labels and roles and expectations? Who are you in the silence? That's where the real work begins. That's when the transformation happens, not in the noise, not in the outward success, but in the quiet, in the stillness. Silence has a way of telling the truth. You see, in the noise, we often hide. We mask our fears, our weaknesses, our insecurities. We fill the air with the sound of our voices to distract from what we're really feeling inside. But in silence, there's nowhere to hide. The truth becomes undeniable. And while that can be uncomfortable, it's also freeing. Because it's only by facing the truth head-on in the rawest form that we can truly grow, evolve, and become who we're meant to be. There's strength in silence that the world often overlooks. We tend to think of strength in terms of action, of doing, of speaking, of taking charge. But sometimes the strongest thing you can do is to be still. It's in those moments of stillness when decisions are made, when clarity comes, when vision is shaped. It's when the noise fades away that the real choices emerge, the ones that matter. Think about the times in your life when you've had to make hard decisions, when you've had to choose a path. How many of those decisions were made in the midst of chaos, in the midst of constant chatter and distraction? And how many of them came to you when you were alone, when you were quiet, when you allowed yourself to hear the thoughts and feelings that had been buried beneath the surface? The moments of silence are when you find your center, when you tune into the deeper rhythms of life, and that's when you make the most authentic choices. It's easy to get lost in the noise. It's easy to believe that success, happiness, peace, they all come from outward achievements, from constant striving, from making a lot of noise. But in truth, the most meaningful achievements are born in the quiet. The quiet moments when you know who you are, when you know what you stand for, when you understand the deeper purpose that drives you. The greatest leaders understand this. They don't always need to be speaking, don't always need to be the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes the most powerful leaders are those who lead by example, who lead through their actions, who know when to speak, when to be silent. They know that true influence doesn't come from forcing others to listen to you. It comes from showing others the power of listening to themselves, of trusting their own instincts, and of creating space for others to find their own voice. It's not about what you say, it's about what you don't say. It's about the pauses, the moments of reflection, the stillness that invites others to think, to process, to grow. Leadership is not just about commanding attention, it's about commanding respect. And respect is earned not through the noise we make, but through the way we carry ourselves in silence, through the way we respond to the world with calm, with patience, with strength. But silence isn't just about leadership. It's about our own personal journey. We all have a story, a narrative that we've created for ourselves based on the things we've experienced, the people we've met, the lessons we've learned. And often we think that story is who we are. But in the silence, we realize that our story is not the end of the road. It's not the final truth. It's just a part of the journey, and the real story is still being written, one moment at a time. Silence gives us the space to rewrite that story. It allows us to let go of the past, to release the old beliefs that no longer serve us, to release the old fears that have held us back. In the silence, we realize that we are not bound by what we've been through, but empowered by what we choose to become. The past doesn't define us. The present moment does. And in the silence, we find the power to make that moment ours. The greatest gift silence offers is the gift of presence. In a world that constantly pulls us in different directions, that constantly demands our attention, silence teaches us how to be fully present in the moment, how to show up for our lives with intention. It teaches us that the present moment is all we truly have, and it's in that moment where everything happens, where growth, change, connection, and transformation occur. Silence helps us step out of the past and the future, out of the regrets and the anxieties, and into the now. And it's only when we are truly present that we can experience the fullness of life. Silence also teaches us the value of patience. In a society that prizes immediacy, instant gratification, quick responses, rapid results, silence challenges us to slow down, to wait, to listen. It teaches us that some things take time, that not everything needs to be rushed, that sometimes the best things in life are the ones that require us to be still, to be patient, and to trust the process. When we embrace silence, we embrace the deeper rhythms of life. We learn to listen to the wisdom within us, to the wisdom of those around us, to the wisdom of the universe. We stop forcing things, stop trying to control everything, and instead, we allow ourselves to be guided by something greater than our own limited understanding. And in that surrender, in that trust, we find peace. There is power in silence. And if we allow ourselves to experience it fully, we discover a strength within us that we may not have known was there. We begin to understand that silence is not a void, it is a space of infinite potential, a space where anything is possible. The truth of who we are, the truth of what we're capable of, the truth of what we can become, it all lies in the silence. It's in that silence that we find our true power. In the busyness of life, the noise is almost constant. Whether it's the chatter of people, the hum of machines, or the endless barrage of information from screens, we rarely find ourselves in true silence. The world pushes us to keep moving, to keep doing, to keep talking. But amid all of this, silence holds a unique power, one that goes largely unrecognized. The value of silence lies not in what it lacks, but in what it offers: clarity, insight, and truth. It's in the silence that we are most likely to hear the whispers of truth that are often drowned out by the clamor of our thoughts, emotions, and external stimuli. Think about the last time you were in total silence. Not the kind of silence where you're waiting for something to happen, but the kind where you allow the space to unfold naturally. The quietness around you allows your mind to slow down, your body to relax, and your thoughts to become clearer. It's in that stillness that the layers of distractions peel away, leaving the core of your true self exposed. In silence, you become more attuned to what is real, what is important, and what is necessary in your life. Many of us are afraid of silence. We avoid it because it forces us to confront things we don't want to face. In the silence, our deepest fears, insecurities, and regrets come to the surface. There's nowhere to hide. We're no longer distracted by the noise, and we are left to sit with our own thoughts, often uncomfortable ones. Silence holds up a mirror to our soul, and sometimes what we see there isn't easy to bear. But it's only by looking directly into that mirror, by allowing ourselves to sit in the discomfort of our own reflection, that we can see the truth. The truth of who we are. The truth of what we've become. The truth of what we need to change. This is where silence becomes transformative. When we allow ourselves to truly experience silence, to step out of the constant buzz of modern life, we create space for self-awareness. In that space, we begin to peel back the layers of our identity and conditioning. We uncover the stories we've told ourselves about who we are and what we can do. Those stories, often filled with self-doubt, insecurity, or fear, have been shaped by external influences, by the opinions of others, and by our own inner struggles. But silence lets us pause long enough to question these stories. Are they really true? Are they serving us? Are they the full picture? Or have we been limiting ourselves based on half-truths and assumptions? Take, for example, the process of making decisions. Most decisions in life are made in the midst of noise. We consult with others, read opinions, or follow trends, often letting external forces shape our choices. But when we allow ourselves the quiet to reflect without pressure, without distractions, without the need to immediately act, we create the mental and emotional space to tune into our deeper instincts and values. In silence, we hear the truth about what we truly want, what we truly need, and what is best for us in that moment. We might not always like the truth we hear, but it's always the one that will guide us toward the best possible outcome. This process of listening to ourselves is one of the hardest things to do in a world that constantly demands our attention. But it's also one of the most valuable. When we begin to trust the silence, we begin to trust ourselves. We become more attuned to our intuition, to our gut feelings, to the wisdom that already exists within us. This is where real self-discovery takes place, not in the noise of the world, but in the quiet moments when we stop searching for answers outside of ourselves and start listening to the answers that lie within. Silence reveals the truth not only about who we are, but also about the world around us. In a noisy world, it's easy to get lost in the opinions and perceptions of others. We start to measure our success by external standards, by what other people think, by what society deems valuable. But when we step into silence, we disconnect from these external influences. We can look at the world from a fresh perspective, unclouded by the expectations and judgments of others. In the silence, we realize that we don't need to seek validation or approval from the world. We only need to be true to ourselves, to our own values, and to our own path. The truth we discover in silence often reveals the dissonance between what we've been told to value and what we actually value. It brings to light the incongruence between our actions and our deepest desires. Perhaps we've spent years pursuing something because it seemed like the right thing to do, because society told us it was important, or because others around us were doing it, but in the silence we begin to recognize that it's not aligned with who we really are. And in that moment we face a choice. We can continue on the path of external expectations, or we can embrace the truth of what we really want and make a change. It's in this silence that transformation begins. The truth revealed in silence is not just the absence of noise, it's a deepening awareness of reality, both within and around us. When we let go of the external distractions, we can see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. This is often uncomfortable, as it requires us to confront the parts of ourselves and the world that we would rather ignore. But it's also liberating. Once we see the truth, we are free to act in alignment with it, to make choices that reflect our true values and desires, rather than simply reacting to the world around us. Silence is not just about personal truth, it's about the truth of the world, the truth of our relationships, and the truth of our place in the larger picture. When we allow ourselves to be still, we connect more deeply with others. In the absence of words, we listen more attentively, not only to what is said, but also to what is unsaid. Often, the most important truths in a conversation are not spoken aloud. They are felt in the pauses, in the silences between words, and the unspoken emotions that linger in the air. In these moments, we are given the opportunity to truly understand the other person, not through the filter of our own judgments or assumptions, but through the pure awareness that silence brings. This is especially important in our relationships. How often do we fill the silence in our conversations with words, with advice, with solutions, simply to avoid discomfort? But sometimes what is most needed is not the noise of our voices, but the presence of our silence. When we listen fully without interrupting, without rushing to offer our opinion, we allow the other person to feel truly heard. And in that space, the truth emerges not just about what they are saying, but about what they are feeling, what they are struggling with, and what they need. Silence allows us to connect on a deeper level, to truly understand and empathize with the experiences of others. This is not to say that silence is always easy. In fact, it can be incredibly difficult, especially in the face of uncertainty or pain. When we are going through tough times, when we are dealing with loss or confusion, the silence can feel heavy, even unbearable. But it's precisely in these moments that silence can offer the most profound insights. When we are at our lowest, when we feel lost and disconnected, silence forces us to turn inward. It forces us to confront the truth about our pain, our vulnerabilities, and our fears. And in doing so, it opens the door to healing. We cannot heal what we do not acknowledge, and it's only in the silence that we are forced to face what we've been avoiding. By allowing ourselves to be present in silence, we create the space for this healing to begin. The truth that comes from this process is not always comfortable, but it's always necessary. It's only by embracing the discomfort of silence that we can move through our pain and emerge on the other side with greater clarity, strength, and wisdom. As we grow older, as we accumulate more experiences, we come to realize that silence is not a void to be feared, but a fertile ground in which the truth can grow. It's in the stillness that we find the answers we've been searching for, the wisdom that has always been within us. We just have to be willing to listen, to allow the silence to reveal what has been hidden beneath the surface. In this world that is constantly shouting for our attention, silence is the space where we find our truest self. It is the place where we can be free from the external noise, from the expectations of others, and from the pressure to perform. Silence is where we can hear our own voice, feel our own heart, and understand our own truth. And once we embrace the power of silence, once we allow it to guide us, we are never the same again. The truth revealed in that silence becomes the foundation of everything that follows. There's a certain paradox about stillness, a contradiction that lies at the heart of the human experience. We live in a world that constantly demands action, movement, and noise. We are taught to be busy, to be productive, to be constantly striving, always doing, always moving forward. But in the midst of this never-ending hustle, there exists a quiet power in stillness, a power that is often overlooked, misunderstood, or even feared. It's in the stillness that we find the truest strength, not because we are doing nothing, but because in those moments of pause, we are allowing ourselves the time and space to reflect, to gather our thoughts, to center ourselves. Stillness holds the power to restore balance, to provide clarity, and to build a quiet but unwavering strength that comes from being rooted in the present moment. At first glance, stillness might seem like weakness. After all, in a world that celebrates the go-getters, the achievers, the ones who never stop moving, standing still can feel like a form of retreat, a lack of engagement. When we see others around us running, pushing forward, climbing higher, it's easy to feel guilty for taking a step back. We live in a culture that often associates busyness with worth and success, leading us to believe that only through constant movement can we achieve our goals, make progress, or create change. But this is where the misunderstanding lies. Stillness is not about inaction, it's about presence. It's about the ability to pause, to take a moment and gather yourself before you move forward. In a world that never stops, stillness is a radical act. And that act, though it may seem passive, is one of the most powerful things we can do for ourselves. When we step into stillness, we allow ourselves to recharge, to gain perspective, and to tap into a deeper well of inner strength that we may not even know exists. There is a strength in stillness that doesn't come from doing more, but from doing less. In those quiet moments, we can feel our roots deepening into the earth, grounding us in who we truly are. The noise of the world may be all around us, but in stillness we become centered. We find ourselves standing firm in the face of the storm, not because we are actively fighting against the chaos, but because we are secure in our own foundation, in our own sense of purpose. This kind of stillness is not passive resignation, nor is it avoidance. It's not about retreating from the world, but about creating the space to observe, to reflect, and to choose our responses wisely. In a world that pushes us to react impulsively, stillness allows us to pause long enough to assess the situation, to understand our emotions, and to make decisions that are aligned with our deeper values. This is where true strength lies, in our ability to step back, to take a breath, and to respond thoughtfully, rather than being swept away by the current of the moment. When we step into stillness, we give ourselves permission to stop rushing, to stop striving for the next thing, the next goal, the next achievement. Instead, we allow ourselves to be present with what is. We create the space to appreciate what we already have, to reflect on how far we've come, and to cultivate gratitude for the moment at hand. It's in this stillness that we reconnect with the essence of who we are, beyond the roles we play, beyond the titles we carry, beyond the expectations we live under. We begin to see ourselves clearly, not through the lens of what we think we should be, but through the lens of what we truly are. And in that clarity, we find strength. In stillness, there is power in simply being. We don't have to prove ourselves to anyone. We don't need to chase after validation, recognition, or approval. We are enough as we are. And this realization, though it may take time to come to terms with, is transformative. It frees us from the pressure to constantly perform, to keep up with the demands of the world. It teaches us that we don't have to always be moving forward in order to be progressing. Sometimes progress is made in the quiet moments of reflection, in the pauses that allow us to reset, realign, and refocus. Strength in stillness is also about trusting the process. We live in a culture of instant gratification, where everything is expected to happen quickly and without delay. But true transformation, true growth takes time. And stillness teaches us patience. It teaches us that there is a rhythm to life, a natural ebb and flow, and that not everything needs to happen on our timetable. Some things unfold in their own time, and trying to force them prematurely can cause more harm than good. In stillness, we learn to trust that everything has its season, and that by being still, we allow ourselves to align with the flow of life, rather than trying to fight against it. Stillness, then, is not only a tool for personal growth, but also a form of resistance. In a world that glorifies speed, achievement, and productivity, stillness is an act of rebellion. It is a declaration that we will not be swept along in the rush, that we will not lose ourselves in the noise of the world. In stillness, we reclaim our power. We stop measuring our worth by how much we accomplish or how fast we go, and instead we measure it by our ability to be present, to listen, to reflect, and to act with intention. When we choose stillness, we also choose clarity. The noise of the world can cloud our judgment, making it difficult to see things clearly. We often make decisions based on pressure, fear, or external expectations. But in the stillness, we can see things as they truly are. We can hear our own voice cut through the distractions and discern what is truly important. This clarity gives us the courage to act from a place of wisdom, not from a place of fear or impulse. It allows us to move forward with conviction, knowing that our actions are in alignment with our deeper purpose. The strength found in stillness is also deeply connected to our emotional resilience. Life is full of challenges, setbacks, and moments of uncertainty. In these times, it's easy to be swept up in the emotions of the moment: fear, anger, frustration, sadness. But stillness offers us the space to process these emotions, to understand them, and to allow them to pass without being consumed by them. In the stillness, we learn to sit with our emotions, not to deny them, but to accept them without letting them control us. We learn that our emotions do not define us, and that we have the power to choose how we respond to them. Emotional strength is not about suppressing our feelings or pretending everything is okay. It's about acknowledging what we're feeling, giving ourselves the time and space to process those feelings, and then choosing to move forward with a sense of clarity and calm. Stillness allows us to build this emotional resilience, to become more comfortable with discomfort, and to cultivate a sense of inner peace that is not dependent on external circumstances. In the stillness, we also find the courage to face ourselves. The distractions of life often keep us from looking inward, from confronting the parts of ourselves that we'd rather avoid. But when we slow down and become still, we are forced to confront our fears, our insecurities, and our doubts. In the quiet, we face the things we've been running from. And it is in this confrontation, in this moment of honesty with ourselves, that we find true courage. It takes courage to look at ourselves clearly, to accept our imperfections, and to acknowledge the parts of ourselves that need healing. But in doing so, we find a strength that is rooted in self-acceptance, not self-rejection. Stillness also teaches us the importance of rest. In a culture that values productivity above all else, rest is often seen as a luxury or a sign of weakness. But in reality, rest is essential for growth, creativity, and well-being. When we constantly push ourselves, we burn out. We lose touch with our inner selves, and we become disconnected from the very things that give us energy and joy. Stillness offers us the space to rest, to recharge, and to renew our sense of purpose. It teaches us that we don't have to be in motion all the time in order to be effective. Sometimes the most productive thing we can do is to rest, to give ourselves permission to step back and let our minds and bodies heal. The strength in stillness is quiet, but it is no less powerful. It is the strength of knowing that we don't always need to act in order to make progress. It is the strength of being grounded in who we are, even in the midst of chaos. It is the strength of trusting ourselves, trusting the process, and trusting that everything will unfold in its own time. Stillness is not the absence of strength, it is the presence of it in its most grounded, centered, and clear form. And in that stillness, we find the courage to move forward with purpose, with intention, and with a deep sense of inner peace. Patience and presence are often misunderstood qualities in our fast-paced, achievement-oriented world. We live in a society where speed is equated with success, and the relentless pursuit of goals is celebrated above all else. The culture we've built pushes us to go faster, to get more done, to meet deadlines, and to respond to the demands of life without pause. In such an environment, patience can feel like a luxury, something we cannot afford to indulge in, a trait that holds us back, as if waiting for something is inherently a waste of time. And presence, it seems to be something we barely have the capacity for, as our minds are constantly pulled in different directions. But in truth, both patience and presence hold a quiet power. They are not about being passive or idle, they are about understanding the deeper rhythms of life, allowing things to unfold in their own time, and learning how to be fully in the moment without distraction or anxiety. These two qualities, patience and presence, work hand in hand, helping us cultivate a sense of balance, clarity, and peace in a world that constantly demands more from us. While they may be undervalued by the standards of modern life, they are in fact essential to living a meaningful, connected, and fulfilled existence. Patience is often defined as the ability to wait without becoming frustrated or upset. It's the capacity to endure discomfort or delay with a calm mind. But patience is not just about tolerating time, it's about cultivating the wisdom to understand that certain things cannot be rushed. We live in an era where instant gratification is the norm. We expect things to happen quickly. We want our food fast, our entertainment immediate, our results immediate. But not everything in life operates on the same timeline. Some things, real growth, deep relationships, meaningful change, take time. Patience allows us to embrace the process, to trust that progress is being made even when we cannot see it in the moment. This doesn't mean we sit back and do nothing. It means we accept that some things need time to mature, to develop, and to come to fruition. It means we trust that the work we are doing, whether it's on ourselves, in our relationships, or in our careers, is valuable, even if the outcome is not immediately visible. In our culture, patience often gets confused with passivity or complacency. People are often told that being patient means waiting around for things to happen without taking action. But patience is far more active than that. It is about maintaining a steady course even when things are uncertain, maintaining faith in the process even when the end is not in sight. It's about choosing to stay engaged with life, despite the uncertainties, despite the delays, despite the frustration. In the long run, patience allows us to see opportunities we might otherwise overlook in our rush to get to the next thing. It enables us to make thoughtful decisions, to allow ideas to simmer, and to approach life with a sense of steadiness rather than impulsiveness. But patience cannot exist without presence. The two qualities are intertwined, each amplifying the other. If patience is about waiting with trust and calm, presence is about showing up fully in the moment. It is the capacity to be completely engaged with what is happening around us without distractions or preoccupations with what comes next. Presence is about being here now with everything we are and fully immersing ourselves in whatever we are doing, no matter how small or mundane the task may seem. When we are present, we are not looking back at what we did yesterday, nor are we worrying about what might happen tomorrow. We are here in this moment, fully engaged with the experience, with the people around us, with ourselves. This is where life truly happens. When we live in the present, we experience life more fully. Our senses are sharper, our emotions are more vivid, and our understanding of the world deepens. We are not distracted by the constant pull of the past or the future, but are anchored in the now, where everything is happening. In a world filled with distractions, being present is not always easy. We are bombarded by notifications, messages, and a million other things that demand our attention. Our minds are constantly jumping from one task to the next, never really allowing ourselves to focus on the task at hand. We are constantly multitasking, believing that we can do it all, but in doing so, we end up being present to nothing at all. We are physically here, but our minds are elsewhere. The power of presence lies in our ability to tune out the noise and bring ourselves back to the present moment. It is the conscious act of choosing where to place our attention. When we are present, we are able to experience life in its fullness. When we are present with another person, we listen without judgment, without waiting for our turn to speak, without being distracted by our thoughts or our phone. We engage with them, truly seeing them for who they are, feeling what they are feeling, and responding from a place of empathy and understanding. Presence is a gift we give to others and to ourselves. It's about offering our undivided attention to whatever is in front of us. But being present does not just apply to our interactions with others, it also applies to our relationship with ourselves. How often do we truly sit with our own thoughts, our own feelings, without rushing to distract ourselves? How often do we take the time to check in with our own emotions, our own needs, and our own desires? Most of the time, we are so focused on external goals or obligations that we forget to connect with ourselves. Yet, true self-awareness, true self-compassion, can only come from being present with ourselves. This is the essence of mindfulness, the ability to be fully in the moment with whatever we are experiencing, whether it is pleasant or uncomfortable. Patience and presence are essential for emotional resilience. Life is full of unexpected challenges and hardships, disappointments, setbacks, heartbreaks. In these moments, it is easy to want to rush through the pain, to push away the discomfort, or to try to fix things before we have fully processed them. But both patience and presence teach us that there is wisdom in waiting, in sitting with the discomfort, in allowing ourselves to feel whatever we are feeling without judgment. We don't need to rush past the difficult emotions. Instead, we can be present with them, allowing them to move through us without getting stuck in them. Patience gives us the courage to stay with our emotions, to accept them for what they are, and to trust that in time they will pass. This kind of emotional maturity does not happen overnight. It takes practice and awareness. We create an environment of trust and understanding where the other person feels valued, heard, and supported. This kind of patience fosters compassion, respect, and love. It helps us to see people for who they truly are, not for who we want them to be. It allows us to accept their imperfections, knowing that growth takes time and that no one is perfect. But patience and presence are not just about our relationships with others, they are also deeply connected to our personal growth and self-discovery. When we are patient with ourselves, we acknowledge that growth is a journey, not a destination. We understand that we are constantly evolving and that it's okay to take the time we need to figure things out. Patience with ourselves means that we don't rush to judge or criticize our mistakes. We allow ourselves to learn from them, to grow, and to do better the next time. Presence with ourselves means showing up for ourselves, even when things are difficult or uncertain. It means sitting with our fears, our insecurities, and our doubts without running away from them, and finding the courage to move forward anyway. In the end, patience and presence are not just about waiting or being still, they are about being fully engaged with the present moment, with all of its beauty and complexity. They are about cultivating a deep sense of trust in ourselves and others and in the process of life itself. Patience and presence help us to live more mindfully, to experience life more fully, and to find peace amidst the chaos of the world. They are the foundation for a life of purpose, connection, and inner peace. When we cultivate patience and presence, we learn to navigate life with greater ease, grace, and wisdom. In every moment, life offers us the potential for transformation. Yet for transformation to occur, whether in our personal lives, our relationships, or our broader understanding of the world, we often need space. Not just physical space, but emotional, mental, and spiritual space. Transformation is an internal process that requires us to step back from the noise and distractions of life long enough to listen to the deeper truths within us. Without this space, change can feel forced, rushed, or superficial. When we create room for ourselves to grow, to reflect, and to become, we invite the opportunity for real transformation to take root. At its core, transformation is a shift, a deep, fundamental change in how we see the world and how we see ourselves within it. It requires us to let go of old patterns, old beliefs, and old habits that no longer serve us. It is not something that happens in an instant. True transformation requires time, patience, and a willingness to be open to the unknown. But without the space for it to happen, these shifts cannot fully take place. In our modern world, we are constantly pushed to be on the go. Our days are packed with tasks, responsibilities, and expectations. We fill our time with activities that keep us busy, but often at the expense of our inner lives. We rush through our days without taking the time to pause, reflect, or listen to our inner wisdom. And in doing so, we deprive ourselves of the very thing we need most to create lasting change: space. Space in this context is not about physical emptiness. It's the emotional and mental room we make for ourselves to breathe, to think, to feel, and to be. It's the quiet pauses between moments that allow us to step out of the constant rush of our lives and reconnect with ourselves. Space is what makes reflection possible. It's the ability to sit with our thoughts without being overwhelmed by them. It's the pause between actions where insight can arise. When we make space for transformation, we allow ourselves the opportunity to question our assumptions, to examine our habits, and to reflect on our patterns of behavior. We begin to ask deeper questions. What do I truly want? What is holding me back? What am I afraid to confront? And most importantly, what am I willing to change in order to live the life I desire? Without space, these questions get lost in the noise of everyday life. But when we create space, these questions emerge naturally. They become the starting point for the kind of deep introspection that leads to real transformation. Transformation often requires letting go. It's about releasing what no longer serves us, whether it's a belief, a relationship, a habit, or a way of thinking. But in order to let go, we need space to process what we're holding on to and why. The act of holding on to something, even when it's not serving us, is often unconscious. We don't always recognize the weight we're carrying until we create the space to reflect on it. And when we finally let go, we create room for new possibilities to enter our lives. The space we make within ourselves becomes fertile ground for the seeds of transformation to take root. Letting go doesn't always feel easy. It requires us to confront the attachments and identities that we have built over time. We identify with certain beliefs, people, or circumstances, and these attachments become a part of who we think we are. The idea of letting them go can feel threatening, as though we are losing a part of ourselves. But true transformation only happens when we are willing to release what is no longer aligned with our growth. When we create space to let go, we allow ourselves to shift into new versions of ourselves, versions that are more authentic, more aligned with our deepest desires and values. This is a process of shedding old skins, of letting go of what no longer fits, and of opening ourselves to the new. But space isn't just about letting go, it's also about inviting something new in. Transformation is not a void, but a space of possibility. It's the openness to change, to growth, to new ideas, and to new ways of being. When we create space for transformation, we invite new energy, new perspectives, and new opportunities to enter our lives. We stop clinging to the old and start embracing the unknown. This process of making space requires a certain level of courage. It's easy to stay in the familiar, even when the familiar is uncomfortable or unfulfilling. Our minds tend to seek safety in what is known, even when that safety is not conducive to our growth. But transformation demands that we step into the unknown, that we release our need for certainty and control, and trust that by creating space, something better will emerge. This trust is built by faith in the process of transformation itself, faith that when we make room for change, change will come. Space for transformation also requires patience. It's tempting to want immediate results, especially in a world that rewards fast fixes and instant gratification. But true change, real transformation, happens gradually. It's a slow and steady process, one that requires time, reflection, and the willingness to face discomfort along the way. We may not see immediate results, and the process may not always be linear. There will be times when we feel stuck or uncertain. But if we give ourselves the space to endure, the space to reflect, and the space to grow, we will eventually see the fruits of our labor. Patience, in this sense, is not passive. It's an active process of trusting in the unfolding of change. It's about showing up for ourselves day after day, even when we don't feel like we're making progress. It's about continuing to make space for transformation, even when the results are not immediately visible. Patience allows us to stay engaged with the process, to maintain faith in our ability to change, and to give ourselves the time we need to fully embrace new ways of being. Creating space for transformation also means making space for vulnerability. Transformation often requires us to open ourselves up to discomfort and uncertainty. To change, we must be willing to step into the unknown, to face parts of ourselves we might rather ignore, and to confront the fears and doubts that keep us stuck. Vulnerability is the willingness to be seen as we are, without the protective armor we often wear. It's the courage to face the unknown and to trust that we will emerge stronger, wiser, and more authentic on the other side. Without vulnerability, transformation is impossible. It's through vulnerability that we break down the walls that separate us from our truest selves. It's through vulnerability that we learn to embrace our imperfections and to accept ourselves fully as we are, in the present moment. When we create space for vulnerability, we allow ourselves to be honest with ourselves about our fears, our pain, and our desires. We give ourselves permission to be human, to make mistakes, and to learn along the way. It's this openness that allows for deep, lasting change to occur. The space we create for transformation is also a space of self-compassion. Change is not always easy, and transformation often comes with its own set of challenges. We may encounter setbacks, make mistakes, or feel as though we're not making enough progress. In these moments, it's important to be kind to ourselves. Creating space for transformation means allowing ourselves to be imperfect. It means giving ourselves the grace to stumble and fall, knowing that the journey is not about perfection, but about growth. It's in this space of compassion that we find the strength to continue, to keep going even when it feels difficult, and to stay committed to the process of transformation. Transformation also requires us to be present with our emotions. When we are making changes in our lives, we are often confronted with difficult feelings, fear, sadness, anger, or confusion. These emotions can feel overwhelming, especially when we are stepping into new territories of our lives. But it is only by making space for our emotions that we can truly process them. Trying to ignore or suppress our emotions only delays the process of transformation. When we allow ourselves to feel what we are feeling without judgment or resistance, we free ourselves from the weight of those emotions. We create the emotional space necessary for healing, for growth, and for change. The more we allow ourselves to be present with our emotions, the more we learn to trust ourselves and our ability to navigate difficult experiences. When we create space for our feelings, we build emotional resilience. We learn that we don't need to be afraid of our emotions. They are part of the process, part of the journey, and they are the teachers that guide us through the process of transformation. As we move through the process of transformation, we begin to see that the space we create is not just for ourselves, it's also for others. When we make space within ourselves to grow and change, we naturally begin to make space for others to do the same. Our relationships deepen because we are no longer holding on to old patterns of behavior or expectations. We begin to allow others to be who they are, to evolve and to become. And in doing so, we create a supportive, nurturing environment in which transformation can flourish not only within ourselves, but within those we care about as well. In the end, the space for transformation is not just about waiting for change to happen. It is about actively creating the conditions for change to unfold. It is about having the courage to let go, the patience to trust the process, and the vulnerability to face our fears. It is about creating room for ourselves and for others to evolve, to grow, and to embrace new possibilities. Transformation requires space to reflect, to heal, to release, and to grow. When we give ourselves this space, we open the door to a life that is more aligned with our deepest values, desires, and truths. The transformation that takes place within this space is profound, lasting, and deeply fulfilling.